There is a fifth dimension beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. Join Ironside and his guests as they take a walk in the Twilight Zone.
Yay! We made it through the Twilight Zone.
That was scary. We were in the Twilight Zone there for a little
time. It was. and to be surprised by Zach's doing a custom clip for us, that's insane. I mean, I feel so honored.
Yeah. That was great. I'm glad he was able to do that. Okay.
We made it.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.
Yeah.
So, welcome, everybody. Got Stephen. How are you, sir?
Very, very good, man. Very good. This is going to be some fun, and I'm glad it's... Holy tinfoil hat, Batman. I mean, seriously, we were being blocked from covering these episodes. My conspiracy theory head was spiraling out of control.
So, and Blair, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I watched these episodes. I hadn't seen these episodes before.
Really?
Probably a lot of the first season I never saw. It was always the later seasons that were mostly repeated on TV that I saw as a kid. But it's really nice to see the old 59 ones.
Yeah. It's weird that Sci-Fi used to have on New Year's Eve or something that and they'd play a marathon of them. So I was familiar with the first two seasons because that's all they played.
No.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do a quick poll real quick.
All right. Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on, Jacob.
Shieldwall.
Talk about these older properties that maybe a lot of people don't know about. But those of us that are older and rare might have seen as a kid, and the impact that these shows would have on us, on our lives, as we were exposed to them and then grow, and the ideas that planted in our heads and things. So I think by going through these two episodes, because these are some really good ones for the first season, they're not probably the best ones, but they're good ones. So, and
they also each Twilight Zone episode is a little different. I mean, you have serious ones, you have silly ones. It's kind of all over the board. But these two are like the exact opposites of each other. You got a good one, and then you have a.
What's interesting about a show like the Twilight Zone is, and I don't know if they really had the budget or the scope to do it with, but you could really go crazy with it, especially like if you had technology of these days. You could go from like medieval times to deep space to literal alternate dimensions. You could be shrunk down to the size of an atom and live in that world. And wait, I just described the MCU, didn't I? But you know what I mean. But those are the ideas that the people that wrote those comics may have been inspired by, is shows like the Twilight Zone.
A lot of these episodes were color plays of science fiction short stories, Ray Bradbury and Asimov and all those type of guys and gals from the 40s and early 50s.
Right, ripped right out of the pages of Weird Tales magazine.
Exactly.
Things like that. And and also if you notice, some of the actors in these shows, especially the second episode, I can't remember his name, but the main character in that, he goes on to play a bunch of different characters in a whole lot of different properties. And yeah, so
Yeah, David Wayne is the main
Mhm.
character's name in the actor's name in the second episode.
also you get to
Episode
look
6.
at like technologies and things, like when the guy in the first part drives up to get his car serviced, like how that whole experience was, like what the expectations were, what the, you know, and what the tools and how the building was, and those kinds of things. And you learn that, hey, you know, it was a long time ago, but if you take computers out of the context, they had telephones, they had electricity, they had
Mhm.
music, they had
Yeah.
you know, refrigeration, you get ice cream and all that kind of stuff, and they had cars that drove and ran on gas, and
Had planes and,
yeah,
you
and
know,
airplanes and all kinds of stuff. So yeah,
Mhm.
so it's not it's removed from us, but not so far removed. It's not like living in Egypt and then, you know,
or the
Yeah.
Yeah.
1800s, you know,
right.
pre-electric, you know, horses and, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah. But
Yeah,
by
in
the
19
way, Martin's car is a 1959 Jaguar
mhm.
XK 150.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And then that's what I'm talking about. Like, so, but anyway, we'll get into that, I guess, when we get into the episode. But
Yeah.
it's those kinds of things that kind of tie all this together. And and we were talking before backstage how, like, for me, Blair, Jacob is kind of in that middle area, but for me, Blair, and Steven, we're on the upper end of the age spectrum here. So you know, we have a closer tie to like when these shows were actually made than somebody a lot younger that can experience it. But so what they're going to see and experience is going to be different than we do because of that connection.
Some of the technology too. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember being a kid. I lived in a very rural area. Hey, Zach, how's you doing? There was still stuff in the 50s. You know, I remember being trucks made in the 50s. You know, the
Well,
starter was on the floor. You know, you
here's
turned the
this.
key, then you started
Mhm.
the floor starter. You know,
Here's the
and
scary thing about this is these episodes are from 1959. I was born 10 years later.
Yeah.
So that's, think about 10 years from now, like backed up from now.
mhm.
Was that 2013? So for the audience out there, what were you doing in 2013? You know,
Yeah.
and but look how far we've come from them till now, as far as
Yeah.
technology and all these other things.
I mean, just to
Yeah.
put that in perspective,
Look.
what you're digging at here is 1959, Sputnik was a thing for over 2 years already.
hmm
I mean,
Yeah.
that's how into the atomic age. It was just a couple of, like, 2.5 years into the atomic age, basically. I mean, this was the beginning of the next age of the 20th century. All of
space
the
race.
technologies were in place. Yeah, we were on our way to the space race. The United Nations building was under construction or completed at that point. It's
Yeah,
it's
Disneyland
kind
had
of
already
crazy.
been open. Disneyland had already been open for a
Right.
number of years.
Oh
The
yeah,
monorail
yeah.
was already there. They already had Pirates of the Caribbean, I do believe.
Mhm.
And you can go see that stuff today.
Yeah, which is
So.
nuts. It's just crazy. This episode's content is closer to our thinking than even 10 years prior to it, which was completely invested in the consequences of World War I, the Depression, and World War II. This was just after that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
jukeboxes and teeny boppers and
And
jalopies
the guy's job, you know, he's now an ad marketing guy. That was like a new position in the 50s for, you know, was, you know,
Yeah.
advertising it, you know, Mad Men type thing.
Yeah, Mad Men taught us that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even the prices, you know, he goes in, you know, it used to be a dime for 3 scoops of ice cream soda.
Yeah.
And, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then he, you know, a little bit later, it goes up to 35 cents. And they're like, whoa, dude. You know?
Yeah, that's inflation.
Yeah. Here, keep the dollar.
Due to have a
Yeah.
heart attack if you walked in there today.
Yeah. That's. I read that the equivalent of $1 today, or to back then today, was $20. So he gave him $20. Pretty much.
Kind of.
Kind of.
You know.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be like, because the price for the 3 scoop was extra, right? Because they only did 2 scoopers.
That's
They
right.
didn't do 3
Yeah.
scoopers anymore.
Right.
And he was like, I'm going to have to charge you extra, dude. You know, like punk behind the counter.
I'm
And he
going to
hands
say
him
hello to the chat real quick.
Go ahead.
So we got Dread.
Hey, Dread.
And Melvin is here. And Zach's so far.
Hey.
So that's, hey guys. And I just wanted to bring up one thing before we get really rolling into it is, let's see here.
Oh, yeah.
Gordon Lightfoot passed away yesterday.
I
Born in
remember
38.
Yeah, he was 84.
Yeah.
Yep.
I listened to a lot of his music in the 70s when I was a kid. He was like the perfect 8-track guy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
yeah,
crazy.
I grew up with this music. I mean, I grew up listening to my parents' music, so I think they even have a record of his that they listen to. So.
That record, the Edmund Fitzgerald, is sort of like one of the creepiest songs I ever heard.
That's right. That's like a legendary tune at this point. It's the top 40 that he fits into, I guess, at this point too.
Yeah, he read a little bit about him. Let's see here. Where was? Yeah, he was one of the instrumental people that started the sound of the pop or folk pop during the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So it's pretty.
That was me.
For a guy. Well, anyhow, thought I'd have that put up there. So.
Yeah, that song was. I remember that being heavy rotation on the radio as a kid.
Yeah.
But I didn't really listen to the lyrics and really understand it till later. You just heard the tune and whatever, but I didn't realize it was about an actual, iron hauler ship that sunk in the Great Lakes. What other songs did he have?
Sundown. I remember that one all the time.
Yeah, Sundown. Yeah. Exactly. And if you
Early
also
Morning Rain.
Listen about the lyrics about that's about some dude creeping around trying to get at his wife or something.
Yeah,
shoot him. So it's not as like sing song as you think it's gonna be.
No, right?
Yeah. That'd make a good
other
rap
songs
song.
were Early Morning Rain, Steel Rail Blues. Let's see here, what else we got? Sundown, If You Could Read My Mind.
That's
Carefree Highway.
Yeah, Carefree Highway is a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's get.
I was just noting that he was born a year before the flashback takes place in Walking Distance, which is supposed to take place. The time that he goes back to as a boy is 1939.
Wow.
Or 1934. Sorry. So it was even before he was born, which is crazy to even think about. 1938. God, what a long time ago.
Yeah. My grandpa, I think, was born in the 20s, somewhere in the 20s. Like 25, something like that.
Yeah, my parents were like 1940 and 41. Or 41 and 42, something like that.
Queen Elizabeth would have been 12 years old.
That's nuts.
when he was born.
Yep. And good grief, what a honey. She was cute as a button when she got that crown on her head. Sorry. She was, though.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I forgot to do something.
All right.
Just keep going.
Okay.
Keep it going.
No problem.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Blair.
So one thing that I noticed about this story is it does. I've seen other stories kind of like it. There's one that's I think it's called Train to Willoughby, or Willoughby Station. You know, this kind of thing where a middle-aged man is kind of hitting, middle age basically, and they're kind of tired of it, so they kind of like go back in time to more of a peaceful, easier time, the childhood,
Yeah.
Right.
your summer being a kid, just doing all the things without a care in the world. Your parents are there and your family, and
for those in the chat to give a synopsis of this first episode, it's called Walking Distance.
Mhm.
It's about a 36-year-old man that's he's an ad executive, high position job in New York, and he has to go to this conference, and it sounds like he's probably going to get his ass beat there, like by the people. You know what I mean? Like they're going to rake him over the coals, and it's high stress. So he stops to get his car serviced, and he realizes he's a mile and a half from his hometown. So he decides to walk there, and he asks the station guy, "Is it walking distance?" Well, I don't know why he asked him that, because you would already be able to tell that it is. But anyway, so the station attendant says, "Yeah, sure." So he walks to town, and when he gets there, he's like, "Wow, nothing has changed in this town at all." And the story proceeds from there to unfold. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about him, getting like a soda and it from the soda shop, and it only costs $0.10 and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So there's more to it that we'll get into when the story, when Jacob gets to whatever he's doing up there. But that's the concept of it. And like he was saying, he's driving a nice car. Why he has the top down though, and getting all dirty and sweaty and stuff? All you had to do is put the top up and put the roll of windows up. But remember, people, cars did not have air conditioning as a standard back then. By 59, cars had power steering, and some of them were heavily overtuned power steering, where you could just use your finger to steer. And what they figured out later was that's way too sensitive, and it's easy to flip the car off the road doing that. But for a number of years, it was a selling point that, look, your wife can just, it's easy for her to steer. Because before that, you had rack and pinion. You had to have, like gorilla arms to be able to really take tight turns and stuff.
Yep. And that's no joke too. I mean, my father had the 4-door version. He's got a coupe. But my father had a sedan of a Jaguar that he was rebuilding, and I got an opportunity to drive it, and that's no joke, man. You cannot turn that wheel. I was a teenager driving that, and it was like, that wheel is really hard to turn.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the old sawtooth gear wheel thing from like the Model T, where it was just a gear on the bottom with a spinning with the thing that turned on the top with a gear that spun. But it's rack and pinion, and if it's adjusted properly, you can turn. But if you're in high speed conditions or something, but it's like if anybody's driven a go-kart at like a go-kart track, it's like that. It's not hydraulically assisted or anything. Now with power steering, which most cars have, it's to some degree, it's that it's just easy. You can just do it with one hand. So that's a difference. Yeah, here he is.
Here we go.
Yep. So
look at the size of that ship wheel that he's got to drive.
I know,
right? Like an 18-inch wheel, for crying out loud.
And that's a sports car too.
Right. And that's the other thing, is the wheel had to be bigger because you needed it to actually get the leverage.
Yeah.
Kind of like how you close a door on a ship, how you to do the watertight door. The wheel being bigger helps you to turn it faster and get more leverage out of it. So that's why the wheel had to be bigger.
Yeah, I don't know how those guys at 24 Hours of Le Mans did it. No power steering, with big wheels.
Because they were men.
Yeah. And once the car is moving.
And the other thing is you got to remember that they didn't have any other option. That's the other thing people tend to forget. I don't understand how people live without electricity. Well, they didn't have it back then, so they didn't know any better.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's different when you don't have it.
Right. Yeah.
It's just your everyday.
I love the idea that he is quite literally a madman. He is like a character from one of those advertising agencies.
He's got the suit.
59.
He's talking about New York and meetings and this and that. And
the only thing is, if he was sort of madman, he'd have a scotch in his hand right now.
Yeah, he'd be drinking.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But you could see the apathy, the misery in his face. I mean, he's just like He knows that any advertising campaign can shoot down an entire ethical system overnight. I mean, he knows the power of what he's wielding.
Oh, I
So-
think isn't this picture from the very end?
This is the very beginning, I think.
Is it? Okay, because then the slides you had were that go after this were like from the very end.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Melvin. They call them saloons in Japan too. Certain cars is called a saloon.
We say coupe.
Yeah.
What they call it, a coupe? Why?
Yeah.
That's
it's just how they are, and
well, coupe is what is it? Etymologically connected to couple. So it has to do with a pair. It's a breaking down the language. And it's probably leaning towards the romantic side of Latin as well. That's how you get coupe as opposed to couple.
yeah. Okay, so this is in the beginning. Notice he has a cigarette machine, and I like the use of this mirror to kind of show. It's just a different way of doing the shot, so it's not boring, and it's kind of interesting.
It's also they zoom into the mirror like he's going into the Twilight Zone.
Right.
Yeah. They talk about that.
The next shot is the
Well, I have a question.
The soda machines and stuff, and it zooms out of a mirror.
I have a question
him walk in, so it's
for everybody. When's the last time you saw a cigarette machine that makes cigarettes? It wasn't a museum or something like that. The one where you could put money in and you either push the button or you pulled that rod.
Early 2000s?
Yep. 1999, Barney's Beanery, West Hollywood, Los Angeles. I bought a pack of Camel Lights out of a cigarette machine with coins.
Yeah. So, it's just I know it's a little off topic, but I was just wondering.
No, it's perfect. It's exactly what this whole episode is about, actually. So
the guy's smoking through the entire thing.
The only place I saw one was at a trucker stop, old one, and they still had it outside.
In the early 2000s, I stayed at a hotel in Phoenix, Arizona, and it had a Coke machine, like a soda machine, that had a soda bottle that had a can of Pepsi as the display, like, hey, this is what we serve. Because back in the day, it wasn't just like lit up things. They actually sometimes would have a real can in this window that you could see, and it had the pull top, not the pop top, but the one where it would actually pull off, and you could put it down in there. And then if it's like in the Rescue 911 70s show where the guy drinks it and it goes down his throat or whatever, and they had to call. I just remember that from being a kid because they were trying to warn you not to do that, like put the tab in the soda and then drink it. But anyway, it had one in there that still had that top on it, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, and the machine still worked. I was like, holy crap! It had like wood grain on the outside of it and stuff.
I still remember the old Coke machines had glass bottles, so it was like a refrigerator door. You put your money in, you'd open up the glass door, and you could take the Coke, and the machine releases, so you could yank the whole thing out.
Right, and then you had the popper, and then it had a thing next to it. Usually, you could put the bottle back in.
And the empties one on one side. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just
got him old.
And that shot right there of him reflecting is, that's shorthand for we're about to enter his mentality, right? That's what the camera's actually doing there, because he not only do we see his reflection in the mirror, but that's the first time he asks about how far it is to his old town, and then we get the title drop as well,
also,
all in the mirror.
If you notice, it's hard to see in these shots, but if you see it, like there's grime and dirt. He's dusty from the road. There's the guy that's servicing the car that's near him. Like he's honking the horn first off. So people today be like, what's this guy doing? What an asshole. But back then, that's what you did. You pulled up, you honked the horn, and like 5 people came out and serviced your vehicle.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, now you're lucky if you can get the guy at the counter to even take your money.
Or understand your English.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But if you do it right, nowadays you just swipe your card, pump your gas, and bounce out. But back then, like if you in the episode, he has to give him the key from his car so he can open the gas tank
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
side because it had a lock on it. But so everything is outside of the town is dusty and dirty and grimy. It's lived in. But if you see when he gets to town, everything is pristine, clean. That soda shop is idyllic. You go in it, there's fresh fruit in a bowl. There's knickknacks on the wall. Everything is clean. It's bright. The uniforms are pressed. All those kinds of things. And it's, the guy is service oriented and attentive. Although in 1959 or whenever he was supposed to be taking place in the real world, it would have been the same way.
Yeah. It wasn't odd that 34 service would be close to 1959 or 1954 service.
Right. And that's not saying you can't get some decent service these days, but the chances are this guy would have a neck tattoo and a bunch of piercings and a beanie on, and be, eating on gummies or something. And,
what's up, man?
Yeah.
What can I get you?
Yeah.
Talking about
hippie.
Yeah. Talking about his artisanal, handcrafted, curated
goat milk,
I've been on
yogurt,
a few
or whatever.
Yeah.
I've been on a few live streams where multiple participants on the panel were working at a gas station while they were streaming. So just to give you a perspective, broadcasting live from behind the counter, on the company's Wi-Fi, no less.
There aren't shops like this anymore. So the closest thing today would be a coffee shop.
You can find a place like this, but it's going to be like a hipster kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I grew up in southwest Missouri, and there was a little town that still ran a little, shop like this.
Yeah. It's all coming back. I mean, I go over in Silver Lake and Burbank, and there are mom and pops opening up shops like this because of the sentiment and the nostalgia is what's driving it. We will see a lot more of that as the future rolls on. We'll probably see movie houses turn into, showing old movies 24/7 because people want to go and see old movies in the theater because they're sick and tired of looking at their TV set. We'll see a lot of this come back, and these perspectives will be generational. It'll be like
another place that you can go find a place that's exactly like that is at Disneyland. I remember going to the one in California, and they had an ice cream shop that was just like that on the inside. So there are some places that you can still find it, and a lot of places it's going to be like hipster type people because they're into that.
Hold on this image though, Jake. This is the first screen appearance of Ronnie Howard.
Yeah, I thought it was Ron Howard. Well, they're looking it up, but it looked like him. Yeah.
Yep. It's crazy. His performance is just so solid. You could see where this kid is going. It's just take a look at this performance, and this show is crazy.
So up to this point, what happens is he walks into town, and the first place he goes is the soda shop, and he's like, "Wow, this place hasn't changed at all, not." And then he wants to get the 3 scoops of ice cream, and he's like, "Back when I was a kid, it was a dime." And he's like, "How much I owe you?" And the guy's like, "Oh, it's a dime." He's like, "Oh, well, you guys are going to lose your ass doing this." And then he's like, "I remember that old man Phillips or whatever is Wilson. He used to sleep up in a chair during the day, take his naps behind the store." And also, if you notice, there was these candies on the counter, and they look like the little Nico wafers or something that you can still get.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were chocolate or whatever, but he pulls a few out of there. And that's when he's done. He gives the guy $1, and the dude's like, "Wow, a whole $1." Yeah, that was a picture of the guy. So what happens is after he leaves, this guy figures out they need more chocolate syrup. And he walks up and he's like, "Hey, we need more chocolate syrup." And this guy's doing exactly what he just described, the other guy. "Hey, I remember he used to nap in here." And so you see, wait a second, this dude's still alive. So this might be the first inkling that people get that, hey, here it is. See this glass thing with the little chocolate things in there? Yeah, he reaches in there and eats a couple of those. Nowadays, they'd be like, "Stop stealing."
Yeah, right.
You know?
It'd be behind the counter.
Yeah.
Hello, Courtney.
Hey,
But
Courtney.
yeah, so he gives this dude $1, and this guy looks at him like he's like, wow, okay. I mean,
roll.
even in 1934, $1 wasn't like $1 million bucks
Courtney.
or anything.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it
No.
wasn't like from a Million Ways to Die in the West, where he's like, "Take your hat off, boy."
That's right. That's $1.
That's my favorite part of that
fantastic.
whole movie. Yeah.
Well, good thing this guy was distracted by the quantity he had just received, because if he had looked at the date of the bill, I mean, I don't know how different was a bill from
Yeah.
1934 to 1959. Where
They reference that later about.
Yeah, I think it looked.
dates.
I think by that point it looked a little bit. It looked a little bit different.
yeah, because I think the red label 5 was already out of commission by 63 or something like that. Anyway, yeah,
But
getting off topic.
He may have had an old dollar bill. I mean, you look at your dollar bills, sometimes you'll find one from the 90s that somehow
Yeah,
escaped
yeah.
the furnace.
But so this is 1934 is when this is supposed to be. So yeah, so he walks down here and he just sees this kid and he's like, "Hey, you know, I used to live around." He's telling everybody, "I used to live around here. This place really hasn't changed." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's the old Sloan house." And this guy's name is Martin Sloan,
Mm-hmm.
the main character. So he's like, "Huh? But I thought that house got sold or whatever." And so he's questioning this kid, and then the kid's like, "Peace out." You're
Yeah, well,
weird."
he's also like, yeah,
Yeah.
Well, he
my
tells
name
him
is
his
Martin
name.
Sloan. Right, he
He tells him his name, and the kid's like, "You're not him. I know Marty Sloan."
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
He takes it
Yeah.
personally too. I mean, the tone of his voice is basically like, "You're nuts, mister. How dare you? I know who Martin Sloan is. Don't try to pull one on me."
Yeah.
Right?
And then he runs inside the house.
Mm-hmm.
He runs into a different house though, like up
Yeah.
The kid runs his own house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And
there's
there's
a
I don't
lot
think we
of
said,
this.
but this is 25 years. He hadn't been home or to his
20,
hometown in 25 years.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's this point here where he goes across the street to his old house and finds, to his horror, that his dad is still alive and is there,
Mm-hmm.
and his mom too. And he totally wigs out. Then
Right.
he starts going like, "It's me. It's Marty. I'm your son." Like, what? Okay, buddy.
And what's interesting is they got a guy to play his dad that kind of sort of looks like him.
But it's
Yeah,
funny,
right?
this actor is older than his dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. He's like
But the guy's like-
46 playing 36.
Yeah, but then the guy playing his dad looks like he's much, much older. You know, some people look like that, you know.
Mhm.
So in this slide right here, so what he does is he walks through the park, and the park is just full of people. Now I will admit there's zero diversity in there. There's not a person of color in this entire show.
Not 1959.
Yeah, but you know what? There were towns in America that was accurate.
There are still towns in America that's entirely accurate.
Yeah.
So he walks through the park and it's idyllic. Again, it's idyllic. Everything is clean. Everyone is wearing like their Sunday best, and there's music, and there's a vendor selling ice cream pops and stuff. And this kid is up in the tree, and the mom's like, "Little Billy, come down, get out of the tree." And he goes, "Come on, Billy, come down." Now, if a guy walked up and told some kid to do something, he'd be like, "Get away from him, you perv," and beat him with sticks or something. But back then, they were just like, "Hey, take him down." And then, but look how she's looking at him.
Yeah. This park
She's like,
too
"You
was.
saved my son."
Yeah. This park too was set up like a park in where Rod Serling was born,
Mhm.
where he grew up.
Is it Ridgeway, New York, or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but it had a carousel and a band shell, and a lot of things were kind of based on his hometown.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a place called Northport in New York. I mean, that's where I went to high school, and there was a full-blown gazebo big enough for like a 20-piece band, and there was a dock where you could hang out and have a picnic with like a whole family. The dock was so big. I grew up in this kind of idyllic thing. I think it's ironic as heck that here he is, he walks up to his own self, and he's graffitiing the column. It's totally awesome that like he's a troublemaker already.
before
Yeah.
this point, the whole time he's walking through the town and talking to everybody, he's reliving. He's like, wow, this is just like I remembered it. It's perfect. And it is perfect. There's nothing wrong. There's not a piece of trash on the ground or anything. And then he says to that lady, I think so, that, hey, when I was a kid, I remember there used to be the band over here and that bandstand, the gazebo thing. He called it a bandstand. And I remember I carved my name on it,
Yep.
way back then. And he walks up and he sees this kid doing this, and he's like, oh, another kid is like following in my footsteps. Cool. It's cool to see they still do this stuff. He's like, wait a second. He's typing Marty, he's scratching Marty Sloan on here. And then he realizes that's him, which I found a little incredulous, because if I saw myself as a youngster, I probably would have recognized myself.
Yeah. I would have freaked a little.
Yeah.
A lot, anyway.
Yeah. I have some concluding thoughts on this episode that that this may be more of a mental thing than an actual time travel piece, but that's the beauty of Twilight Zone, is that you can speculate these things to hell, because the authors did. They must have.
Right.
Yeah. Is this all in his head? Is this having like a little break in reality, or
right? How much detail do we really want to give the audience? Because we want it to be a little vague, we want it to be a little bit of a something to chew the fat over breakfast, the next day.
In this 25-minute episode, you get to go through this whole thought process as the audience. What would I think of myself, my young self think of myself, my older self, and what would my older self think of my younger self? Would my younger self, if they found out where I've been, what I've done in my life, would they be proud of me, or would I be a disappointment to myself? You know what I mean? Or what should I tell my younger self?
You tell them where you've been and what you've done, and you disappear.
Yeah, you can't say anything because you're going to destroy your own timeline. You just got to be vague as vague.
Well,
but he does try to tell him, but so he's trying to find his younger self later, and he wants to tell him something, and he's not trying to tell him a specific event. June 1942. Don't be in the city, or something like that. He's just trying to tell him to enjoy the summer, because life is not going to be like this summer, too much longer. Enjoy the summer is what he's trying to tell him. Also, enjoy the popcorn, the cotton candy, the ice cream, the friendships, the ball games, the marbles, all that stuff.
And the other thing is so here we are watching this in 2023. So we have decades upon decades of science fiction and ideas and movie things and all this. But the way this character is acting, we have to remember that he might not have had that kind of exposure. So we would be like, well, I know what the rules of time travel are because Hot Tub Time Machine told me, and so not to like do certain things, but he doesn't know that.
Yeah, this would be totally alien territory for the audience too.
Right. Exactly. So the way that he interacts is, some people today might be, this guy's kind of dumb how he does it, but that's not really applicable because of that.
Oh yeah, what is that called? What kind of seat is that called?
The rumple seat.
Yeah, you talk about how it's like the guy's like, I haven't seen one of these in 20 years, and the kid's like, this is brand new from Detroit, mister. And then that's when he kind of starts getting clued into the fact that he may not be in the right time, or something's really wrong.
Well, I mean, seeing his younger self, I'm not sure how he didn't. Because wait, that happened after or before he saw?
Yeah, this happened before.
Yeah, he saw himself.
This is
okay.
Yeah, this is after the Brownie Howard runs in the house, I think. Well, we lost Steven.
Yeah, I think he kind of froze up there a little bit, it looked like, too.
Oh, I thought he got tired of me talking so much.
That's the gas station attendant guy.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm all over the place.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's go back to here. There we go. So yeah, I don't know what I would do. I mean, would you go up and talk to your younger self?
I don't think I would.
Well, I mean, it depends. I think my younger self, depending when I was younger, maybe if I, depending on the situation, um, I would have asked more questions of my older self. If I realized that that was the case, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I don't think my younger self would totally recognize me. I've seen pictures of Blair when he was young, when he in the Navy, and I don't think you look anything like you did.
No,
You know what I mean? So,
no.
um, which is weird. Getting old is kind of weird. Like I don't look anything like I did when I was younger. Um, so
Yeah, especially me as a kid.
yeah,
Yeah, I could walk right by myself, younger self, and my younger self would never suspect.
right. But what would you? I mean,
Yeah.
what would you say? Be like, oh, never date a girl with the dagger, a tattoo of a dagger on any part of her body. Would that be
Yeah.
some some good advice?
Buy Microsoft.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Never sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Give him the sports magazine,
Right.
from the future.
Yeah. Back to the
Here.
future. Yeah, that'd be but this guy, all he really wants to do, and so he like scares the kid, and the kid runs home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Which he's actually gobsmacked that he just ran into his younger self. So he's a little bit freaking out a little bit.
oh,
Yeah.
Nas is in the chat now. Yeah, when Nas was 10, was that like 5,000 years ago?
This is going to beat up his 10-year-old self.
Yeah. Yeah, so I know I can win. Yeah. The but so I think at this point he's questioning his sanity. And that's what the when he confronts his father and mother, they're like, "You're insane.
Yeah.
You need help." You know.
It's,
They're like, "Go away before we call the cops. We don't want to get you in trouble."
isn't it kind of weird how his parents don't recognize him at all?
Right. Because I don't know. I mean, do you think your parents would recognize you when you were 36?
I think my dad would have.
If you
Yeah.
could see
Yeah.
photographs of my grandpa and my dad and my siblings, we look a lot alike. I think
Yeah.
they would recognize you as, are you part of our family?
Here he is. All right.
Good
grief.
Yeah, you always kind of resemble like a grandparent, or from your parents, if you're looking at them, sometimes they'll recognize themselves in you, but then they'll see their parents or an uncle or.
When I was little, I looked, and you saw a picture of my mom when she was the same age. We looked a lot alike. Like you could tell that I was, that we were related, and then that I was her offspring, because I get same nose, facial features, all that. But also same with my grandfather. You could also see that in me as well. So yeah, you would be able to tell. I don't know about now though, because I got like I don't. I'm much older, so I don't look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just giving him the weird eye, like.
Well, and both of them, I
Okay.
believe, in his current timeline, both are dead.
Yes.
Right.
Especially
Yeah,
for
right.
sure, his mother is.
Yeah.
The way that he reacts to her, because she's looking pretty old, and this is 1934. So who knows if he has any older brothers or anything? But
Yeah.
Yeah, they just kind of shut the door on him and think he's a
Well, the
nut.
dad should be alive. He's younger, so.
Yeah, I know,
you're
right?
talking about the actor. Would they put like age up makeup on this dude or something?
That's
think
what
so.
it looks like.
I think he just looks like a older guy. I mean, I know people in high school who looked like they were cruising into their 30s, even though they're like barely 16.
Yeah. You mean the ones you sent to get you smokes and beer?
Exactly. You find that one high school kid who's starting to get that forehead sweep. You know, he's losing his hair already. Guess who's gonna go try to buy the beer for everybody?
Yeah. So this is the dad, and he was actually in a movie I just did, To Kill a Mockingbird. He was
Yeah, a
the
lot of these
sheriff.
actors are like all over, you know, working in the 50s in TV and movies and.
Well, it's like now there are a lot of actors that you see over and over, especially with the DEI and everything. You know, they're the same, but it was that way in the 60s and stuff. Was the guy from Big Trouble in Little China? He played Lo Pan. He was like, anytime they needed an Asian actor, that guy was it for for most stuff. So he was in like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of shows.
Yeah. So Martin is actually, when they filmed this, he's playing a 36-year-old. So same age as me, but he was actually 46.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And did I miss the mid episode narration yet? Did we get to that yet?
Yeah,
so.
we well, what we talked about was seeing himself at the gazebo while he was scratching on that, and then I posed the question of what would you do, that the episode is posing. What would you do if you ran into your younger self? Would you tell them anything like, hey, you know, never date a woman with a tattoo of a dagger on any part of her body, or, you know, something like that? You know, what kind of advice? And everyone was like, you know, tell them who's going to win the World Series so we can make money and buy Microsoft. You know.
Well, this is one of a few episodes. I think it's about 4 episodes where there's a mid-episode narration by Serling to kind of make sure the audience is on their rails, because this is going to get a little wonky. And it was a rarity in the Twilight Zone canon that he would step into the middle of the episode and talk.
Did he do that on this one?
He does it in this episode. It's one of the features that makes this a classic episode.
Yeah.
And I can't get over the idea that he's quite literally talking to a boy named Marty in a time travel episode. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that'll have a little influence.
A wee bit, just a little tiny bit, maybe.
So I forget what they tell him here. They tell him to go away at this point because they just think he's a crazy man.
Mm-hmm. But remember, too, if this is 1934, they're starting to see the first major movement of undesirable hobos because of the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
well,
they would be on their
hobo.
guard, especially in a little cloistered town like this.
Yeah. Strangers coming into town. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So after he sees himself at the gazebo and his younger self runs away, he goes back to his house and he tries to talk to his parents again.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulls out all his cards and money and tries to show them, hey, Left Eye.
Hey,
yeah, he did that he did that when he met the Ron Howard kid too. He's like,
he tried to.
You're not Sloan, and he's like, here's my driver's license, and the kid bounced, so he didn't really actually get to show it to him. But
and he leaves all his cards there because his parents like totally reject him, and they're like, you know, you need help. We don't.
He tries to give him to his mother, and she like throws him on the ground. She's like, I don't want to look at him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to tell him, look, we don't want you to get hurt. You need help. You need to leave. You know, get out of here. We're calling the cops, kind of thing. And then he's just stunned, and he goes to the carousel and sees himself on the carousel. And then so he hops on the carousel and he's trying to call out to himself because he wants to tell him something.
But in all honesty, I think he's freaking out by this point. Like,
I think he is too.
And so he's kind of like a creeper when he does it.
Yeah, he had total creeper vibes on that.
Yeah, which scares all the other kids and himself.
Yeah.
And so he kind of his younger self runs away from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then,
Foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
then he falls,
And hurts his
On the-
leg. Yep.
hurts
There he
his
is.
leg.
Yeah, which
And
is pretty much
this
what
part was
nails it.
like, and
Yeah,
he's like,
so-
I just wanted to tell him to enjoy the summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the other key part of this. None of these kids look at him. When they get off the ride, so the ride shuts down, the light focuses in on the guy, and all of the other people don't make eye contact with him, and they do their best to keep them in the shadows so you don't actually see their faces, and they almost become amorphous while they move around him. Like even though adults, nobody looks at him like he's not even there.
Yeah.
And so he hurts his leg, and come to find out he's going to have a permanent limp now, which all of a sudden he now takes on.
Yeah, he actually
Where-
clenches his knee, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't he clench his knee and fall to the
Yeah,
ground
yeah,
and screams?
Yeah, he has the Korskin brothers effect.
Yeah, or well, it's a time dilation or time ripple
Right,
effect where it
right.
just
Yeah.
echoes into the future and the past at the same time. So yeah.
And I can see looking at this episode now, thinking it's just this is just a simple show, back then. But this was actually for the time limit they had on the show was pretty complex.
Jude, yeah. You think that this is pre-space race? I mean, we just dropped 2 atomic warheads, United States, and like this is barely 15 years later. This is really just the beginning of science being common knowledge. That's what this show was provoking, was more knowledge about physics and more knowledge about how weird the world really was. Kind of expanding the youth's mind so that they'd be prepared for whatever the 60s was going to bring. Because things were changing really fast. I mean, textbooks were being republished every year because science was discovering new crap. It's crazy.
Well, they must have stopped when I went to school because all our
Yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah. By the
60s
80s, we were
crap.
doomed.
Yeah, it kind of slowed down there,
Yeah.
And then after this happens, he's sitting on the carousel by himself, and then his father comes up.
Yeah.
He hands him his cards and says, "We looked at your stuff when we saw the name, and then we saw the expiration date was like 1960, and then the money had different, futuristic numbers." So his father kind of, realizes what's going on, and he talks, and then his father does this thing where it's like, "But you need to leave. This is not your summer. This is his summer. This is his time, not yours. You had this time. Now you need to go on."
Right. It's not fair to try to share it.
Yeah, he even says that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
And I don't. Is any of the time travel stuff even in the literature at this point? Isn't this like kind of the first time that we talk about like the past the future interfering with the past, where 2 beings can't occupy the same time zone, where they may delete each other? You can't share the same space.
Well, you got to remember that 1959 Starship Troopers was written and published. It was published. There were a bunch of other. So this is like this decade of the 50s is the birth of like the hard science fiction.
Yeah, this is like the golden era.
I think a lot of these ideas have always been there, and some of it was in short stories and other things.
Mark Twain wrote a novel, remember?
Yeah.
Was it a Yankee and King Arthur's Court?
Right.
Right.
It was a time travel. I don't think they talked about 2 people can't occupy the same space.
Right. So what Steven's talking about is there was time travel, but no one really worried about like the intricacies of it. Like if you shake hands with them, or if you kill your they might have thought about if you kill your grandfather, you won't be there. But now you're starting to think like different kinds of, if I touch myself, we atomize and all this. And because there was scientific research going on, and they were publishing papers about quantum physics and the nuclear age, and now everyone's interested in science more than they might have been before as a general public. Plus now you have the medium of TV. So if you own a TV, you can be exposed to this without having to go out of your way. All you have to do is sit on your couch at a certain time of night on a certain day of the week and eat potato chips and drink soda and eat those bomb ass TV dinners they used to have with the foil, the really good ones that had the cherry pie and stuff in it.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, not the crap you get today.
But I don't think he was talking about physics. I think the father was just like, it's
No.
more of a, you are out of time. You're the outlier here.
Yeah.
You know, I understand why you're here. You're looking backward, but you need to look toward your future, not run back to your past.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you're my son, but my son is the child. He needs to be the child now. You can't be the child anymore. Sorry, you've got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mind you, at this point, when this story was being presented to the Twilight Zone, group, whoever was gathering screenplays and saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to run with this screenplay. We're going to do this one for the first season. This one works. We don't need to do any rewrites. Let's go." Einstein's experiment of relativistic time had already been performed by the Air Force and the Navy, where they went up into higher altitudes and discovered that indeed clocks do move at different rates, physical clocks moving at different rates because of relative position to the center of the earth. That was already on record when this story was presented to the public.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. But the difference with this show and a modern show is that one guy wrote it, one guy produced it, and it wasn't a room full of 50 people trying to figure out what was going on. It was their story group consisted of 2 people. And that was it.
Yeah.
And he's like, here's what we're going to do. And they didn't have a lot of time or money to film these things.
that's right.
So
That's right. And they kept it simple too. I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
the reason for the mid episode narration was because this was such an exotic concept to present. I mean, this is beyond supernatural. We're not talking about magic, and there's enough physics in everybody's head to know that these guys might actually know what they're talking about, that this time travel thing may actually be possible. So I can imagine that Rod Serling was like, I don't want to narrate in the middle of this episode. And the producers are like, you damn well better, because you're going to lose your audience halfway through the episode. And that was it. And they just wrote it in one line, satisfied the producers. Let's move on. This is still only episode 5 of the first season of this exotic show.
Another thing to keep in mind is 1959, not very many houses, less than 50% of households had a TV.
Mhm.
Hell, even the Tennessee Valley Electric Power Project that only finished in the 30s. There were places in Tennessee in Kentucky that didn't even have electricity up till then.
Oh yeah,
So, there were, so this was all groundbreaking stuff for most people.
And they
So
didn't have internet.
Well, right. Yeah. So you had to have that explanation just for people to kind of try to catch on and figure it out. People weren't dumb back then. It's just they weren't as exposed to as much information as we are now.
Yeah.
I'll say this: they weren't exposed to the types of information we are.
Right. Needed a little shepherding,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is still the age of selling encyclopedia collections.
Yeah.
Door to door.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's crazy.
So in the next scene after this, he goes back to he's like, okay, cool. He goes into the soda shop in the same town, but now everything is different. There's music playing, and there's people doing the jitterbug, or even past that, whatever they were doing in the 1959.
Kind of like rock dance or whatever it was that.
Yeah. I mean, it was still kind of like a poppy kind of music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sock hop thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there another shot that the first thing I noticed when I was watching this was those book racks? I mean, when was the last time you went into a diner and there were novels that you could buy or borrow and read? There's not even magazines in those places.
I even saw they had a rack of TV guides. I'm like, oh my God.
TV guides. They had TV guides, which shows that's their way of showing you're in the modern era because they have TVs. Also, if you look behind this guy, look at the shake mixers. They didn't have that kind of stuff in the 30s, or if they did, it was only in New York City or something.
Yeah.
and he's got electric coffee maker. They might have had that in the 30s though.
Well, I just his attitude too. Look, he's like leaning on the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
this
it's
guy's
that
supposed
same
to be.
attitude.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like the beanie, bearded, Starbucks guy now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a hipster. He's like, Mister, let me tell you something, Mister.
Yeah, you got to get with the times. Right? They weren't saying groovy quite yet.
Not yet.
The
no.
lingo.
And this was like the beatnik era, right?
Yeah,
here.
right before the beginnings of that whole thing.
Yeah.
Ginsberg and all that.
Yeah.
Kerouac and all those guys.
I mean, jukeboxes existed, but no diner or coffee shop was able to afford one like this. I mean, that became a thing that everybody could afford at that point because it was already being cycled out of existence by radio and television and everything else.
Yep. He's got his little pimp ring.
Yeah. And when he walks in with a limp too.
Yes, he's because of the accident has now transitioned. So, but this is when he walks in, he starts to realize, oh crap, I'm back in the future. And he asks this guy, he's like, what do you need? And he's like, I'll have a soda with 3 scoops. And he's like, well, that's going to be extra. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's like, how much? And he was like, 35 cents. So then he's like, well, screw that. I changed my mind. Because he realizes that he's back in the future now and he needs to get back to his car.
Right.
So, yeah.
The ice cream's not going to taste good anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, 1959, it was still going to be made with real milk and stuff.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
It wouldn't be like, And then he does ask about Mr. Wilson, and the guy's like, oh, yeah, that guy died like almost 20 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So then he rolls back and picks up his car. Actually, I don't even know if they show that part. Yeah, he does. He gets in the car and then he leaves, doesn't he?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, when he's limping, his limp is almost like he's had the limp the entire time now, his life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now kind of like integrated into his his part of his body,
I think you were right. This is the last shot here.
Right. So now he's reflecting on his entire experience. The reason I say that is because his jacket is clean. When he pulls up, he's like sweaty and his jacket's dirty from the dusty road and whatever.
And for all we know, that could have played out in his head, and he's just sitting here the entire time.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. That's why you go back to what you're saying. Did this even happen? How much of it did happen?
And I wouldn't doubt, if you check the episode, that there is 2 shots that are identical to each other. It's when he first shows up at the gas station and an identical shot of when he thinks he's leaving for the first time, right? Like this shot and the first shot at the beginning of the show, where there's a parallel where the whole story happens maybe in a split second while he's sitting in the car brushing his suit off. We don't know. It's a Twilight Zone episode. We're not supposed to know. That's not the point. Knowledge is not the point. Discussion and information is the point.
And he looks very thoughtful in this. And then doesn't he? I'm trying to remember if I feel like he had a better outlook on life after this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seemed to have kind of a attitude in the beginning.
Yeah, he comes up to this gas station and he's pretty harried, right? It's like he's not really comfortable. Miserable, I think, was the word I used at the beginning of the show too.
Yeah.
His job sucked. He didn't want to. He was tired of the job. Maybe he's thinking I'm in the wrong job. I'm getting my ass beat I'm getting my job is stressful. Everyone's yelling at me all the time. It's a lot of responsibility.
Meetings.
Right. Yeah. And
who knows what
at
ethical.
The beginning of it, he's speeding into this place here. Kicking up a lot of dust. He's talking fast, get a move on it. And this, he's quiet and slowly drives off.
Kind of chilled out a little.
And it also, I think, for the audience members, makes you think, what would you say if you could see someone in your family or the past that is no longer with us? Like, what would you say to them? How would you try to interact with them? Would you say, hey, it's me from the future or whatever, or maybe not say anything, but just talk to them? And you see that, I guess it's like a trope. You see that a lot where maybe they don't know who you are, but you get to say something like, hey, I'm sorry or whatever. And that's a cathartic time for you. And then you can move on with your life.
Yeah, like, Dad, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything, I think is what Marty says to his dad. I can't get past the Back to the Future parallels that are in
Right.
here. It's just minus the 88 miles an hour.
You figure if Marty had gotten stuck in 1955, this would only be a couple years past that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, which is crazy to even think about.
And those guys who did that movie would have been kids at this time watching this, because those were all the boomer kids growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You could meme the Cincinnati guy into the picture, and if anybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a good episode. I like this episode. It's it gets you to think a lot in 25 minutes, and it can cover a lot of ground. And again, you get to see little what's his name, Ron Howard in this.
Ronnie Howard, back then.
Ronnie Howard. You get to see
crazy
how life was back then. I like looking at stuff when I see shows like this. I like looking at the sets, and I look at the soda fountain and how that thing worked, and how's that compare to stuff we have now? Is it that much different? Or, I wish we had something like that nowadays, but we got rid of it for some electric piece of crap that breaks or doesn't work or isn't as good, or, isn't as tactile or whatever. Or it just went away. The attention span shrunk to the point where it's no longer a cool thing to do. And
changed.
Yeah. And also you can look and say, look how much better things are than they were back then.
True.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I got a little bit of trivia too for this episode.
Yeah, let's do it. I got a few comments to make before we go on to the next one too, but go ahead. Okay.
The sign at the gas station reads, "Service Station, Ralph N. Nelson, Prop." So the sign at the service station actually has Ralph N. Nelson, Prop, and he was the prop and production manager for the Twilight Zone.
Oh, episode. Nice.
Oh, so they were throwing Easter eggs in back before it was
yeah.
Yeah. And the episode was filmed predominantly on sets built for Meet Me in St. Louis, and it's the TV movie that came out this same year in '59. So,
isn't this the same year that Elvis went into the army, or was that before this?
Well, he went into the Korean theater, so it was way before this. That's 54, right? Early 50s was the
Elvis.
Korean.
I thought.
No, wait a second.
That was still a draft.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it was after the Korean War.
Right, but that's why he had to
55.
We had to draft up until like 72.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's like 55 or something, like mid 50s.
Okay. No, somebody Google it.
No, I got to find out.
Chat.
See, if this was 1959, we just argue about it to no end and never find the answer until someone went to the library or something.
58.
I remember those arguments.
Yeah. Okay. 58.
Hey, can somebody go to the library and look that up, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 58.
Oh no. Even better, you get on the phone, you call the library, right? Because if it's a midday party, and the librarian would be like, "Thank you for giving me something to do."
Yeah, a bit of a hurry.
And we'd all be on a party line, and the person on the other end would be actually moving like the wires around on a switchboard, and they'd be listening to everything we were saying. Right. Kind of like how Twitter looks at your tweets now.
Nothing much has changed.
Fantastic.
So, Roman, Stephen, what did you?
Oh, I wanted to mention there was a couple of things that I noted that, upon rewatching this episode, you can kind of scrub through it and check and see if he's got a minor limp that he's gotten used to, and that he's kind of forgotten it. Maybe, was there a real temporal ripple, or was that just him mentally recalling? Did he actually speak to his father, or was it a mental exercise of what would my dad tell me right now to get me back on track? Like, how much of this is happening inside of his head while he's waiting for his car to get tuned up, right? Maybe he just went for a walk And maybe he never made it to that town and just walked back to the gas station. And one thing that I noticed was his reaction to the soda pop guy when he said, "Oh, where'd you get that limp? In the war?" And he kind of chagrins and says, "No, no, no." But it may be that due to the world he was living in growing up, that he had an accident when he was a child and had a limp. But when the war happened, people started asking him, "Where'd you get that limp in the war?" And for pride's sake, he said, "Yeah, I got it in the war." And he's been lying this whole time. Remember, he's an advertising executive. He's miserable about his life. Maybe he doesn't feel fulfilled. There's enough information to suggest that this is maybe more of a mental theater than anything else. And the time factor is just a creative way of wrapping a metaphor around it, I guess.
That's the other thing that people, that he being asked that, some people are like, well, why would someone ask him that? A man his age, if he had nothing wrong with him, would have definitely been drafted.
Yeah, he would prime.
Yeah, he would have been. Maybe he didn't see combat. He was definitely in uniform doing something.
Right.
So that would not have been a weird question to ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it would have been a weird thing for him to say, "No, I got it as a boy. I never served." That would have been awkward in 1958 with the height of the Cold War basically brewing.
Yeah.
And Kennedy was, riding around his PT boat, for crying out loud, right? I mean, this is early on. This whole thing is, it's crazy. The time he goes back to is the Depression era. And the time he's living in is basically the beginning boilings of the Cold War.
Mm-hmm. But it's also one of the height of prosperity in America.
Yes.
Yeah. The baby boom is in full swing. The economy, we're the only one going worldwide. We're the only one making cars. We're the only one making steel production, because all the other major competitors were destroyed.
Yeah, we're rebuilding Japan and Germany during this time.
Yep. Russia is still recovering. They lost upwards of high end, like 40 million people out of their, all their industries up to Moscow, totally wrecked. Europe ravaged.
We're dominating.
Yeah, and Russia was experiencing a changeover of power. They were going from Stalin to Khrushchev, right?
Yeah, there were purges and all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, the world was a scary place. So him being able to go back to his hometown and pay for a soda fountain for 10 cents, it must have been just mind-boggling for him.
So, but 20 years before that, we're in the throes of a severe depression. So, but anyway, so it was I liked that episode. I thought it was good. Wrapped up nicely. I didn't have a lot of questions about the ending or anything. It just didn't abruptly end or anything like that.
So much meat on that bone too. I mean, imagine how exciting it was for some kids in college who would watch that episode. Like they watched an episode of Black Mirror. They go to their buddies the next day and be like, "Dude, did you see the new episode of Twilight Zone?" Be like, "Heck yeah." And they chew over the fat all week, perhaps, because it wasn't until next week that they get another one.
Yeah, I think it was a very popular show at the time. A lot of people talked about it.
It was live action Astonishing Tales.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's the Game of Thrones of 1950. I don't know if it was that big.
Not quite that bad.
Close. It's probably close.
Yeah.
Okay. Blair, did you have any last thoughts?
Just one. So the soda jerk, what you're asking about is a limp. Did you get the war, mister? You kind of see how he's kind of excited to ask about it. There's a certain age that the war at that time would have been over 14 years. So somebody his age 45. Probably would have been a kid in the 40s, would never have even had a chance to serve.
Right.
But then afterwards, there's a big thing about meeting people from the service who, got wounded,
Yeah. Because along with Twilight Zone was Sergeant Rock, and we had all of those old black and white TV shows about, being in the war and how cool it was to be in the war. And
you would see a person like that all over the place. They were everywhere. Your next door neighbor was that guy. Your teacher was that guy.
Yeah.
Your You're
Yes.
and or there was somebody that worked in a factory. The lady down the street was Rosie the Riveter,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something. So it was,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it was that way in the UK too. You couldn't walk 2 feet without running into somebody. And in that country, it had been bombed. So you might still be able to. I know when I went to Sicily in the 90s, there were still bullet holes in buildings from the war.
Yeah.
They just,
Yeah.
but then again, there were still
There-
like Roman roads and stuff. So they're not
Yeah.
real big into like
How
building
bizarre.
stuff over. But yeah, so, and in countries like that, they have that memory goes deep. They don't forget.
Mhm.
I'm not saying like in a bad way. It's just that there's so much history there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been weird. Nowadays, it's like we had so many years of war, but if you never turned on the news and you just lived in a city somewhere, you might never even know that it happened, because there were no rationing or anything like that. So, um, but yes, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So
This episode, holy crap.
One thing about the Twilight Zone, especially, they had no problem talking about the devil.
No.
Satan would come along and do his little deals all the time in this show, or some type of thing.
Yeah, but I wanted to note that the other episode we just watched was totally deadpan serious. Like,
Oh, yeah,
there was
yeah.
no
Yeah,
tongue in cheek whatsoever, not even a side
This-
look of a giggle.
Yeah, this
This
is not
one
evil
is almost
devil.
a mad comic book
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
And I think that they did that the same way Buffy did, was to make it tongue in cheek so that the danger level of being blasphemous was never exceeded. Right. So they
Right.
kept it very light. They kept it very whimsical. And this guy, you wanted him to be dead by the end of the episode, right? I mean, he
Yeah,
was a
right.
miserable
Yeah, yeah.
bastard.
Yeah, the devil, is more of a scamp character than
Mm-hmm.
evil
Oh,
or anything.
yeah, they even had like the wah, wah, wah kind of music in the background. Everything was a jest. When he
Yeah,
stamps
so
that
this one's a-
contract, it's hysterical.
A hypochondriac man sells his soul to the devil, exchanging it for several thousand years of immortality, and immediately squanders it.
Yeah, it's not just immortality, but it's invulnerability.
Right.
Yeah.
So he can't die.
Well, he can't have a limb removed, right? He can't get damaged.
Right.
So
yeah.
he's
yeah,
not
yeah.
only immortal, but you could live as a puddle of mud.
It can
And,
only.
Yeah, I
he-
mean, modern day people could think of some really crazy ways to torture this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Doing that,
Mhm.
but this is 1959, so I don't know. Maybe people could, there are people out there that could think it up, but in a show like this, it wouldn't be some crazy stuff where they locked him in an Iron Maiden and then threw him in the ocean and he would just drown over and over
Yeah.
again or something.
I've seen that show.
Yeah, some crazy stuff like that, but.
Right. Or magnetically put rebar through his body and toss him into.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
apparently
Potomac.
that wouldn't work. He's
No.
like Superman. It wouldn't be able to penetrate him. But anyway,
Right.
Although, he had to eat and poo, I guess. So who knows?
Yeah,
We're
you
getting
could
too far into it now. It's just,
Yeah.
he's
So
None of the
our
stuff we're
humble
talking
little
about happened
story
to the show,
starts.
people.
He's afraid of germs. He's afraid of dying. He's begging his wife and insulting her for nefariously trying to kill him in his sleep because she left the window open. Talk about the modern age. Good heavens.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised she hadn't left him by this point. I mean, that's
Take care, Melvin.
well, it was
I mean-
1959. That was not.
Yeah.
something that was.
or even just don't get him anything. Let him do it. You want to do this?
Right.
You do it.
But that was 1959. That just it never
Yeah.
crossed her mind, because
Well, and-
she didn't want to be a bad housewife.
And she married the guy in the first place. So God knows how long this has been going on. Right.
Seems like a while.
Yeah, she doesn't
Yeah.
look that young. So
Just kind of worn down.
mhm.
Mhm.
I do like his scarf though. That's the one thing. He's
Oh yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
nice scarf.
Nice.
Hey, Roman.
Hey, Roman.
Iron out those underwear. Inspection this week. See you back inspection.
Yeah. Yep.
Plus, also, housewives didn't wear makeup a lot. Not like that. They would get all gussied up, literally, for a special occasion. But otherwise, it wasn't like everybody was buying bags of makeup and keeping them on hand, right? It's not even like that stuff would last really, really long either. Like those bottles would dry up, and they were hundreds of dollars to buy really high quality makeup products. So she looks not that young because she's probably not. Right. This comparison to the skincare products and all the maintenance we do on ourselves for visual effect.
Yeah. And she's genuinely worried about her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor's kind of like, yeah, there's something wrong with you.
Yep.
And then
the out of nowhere, stepping out of a two-dimensional window in the world comes this guy.
But I like to, as the doctor's and the wife is walking the doctor to the door, the doctor writes her a prescription.
Right.
Yeah, she's looking a little run down. She needs some vitamins.
Yep. For nerves. Here's some morphine.
Yeah, right.
Oh, in the 50s? Yeah, they were handing out Valium like it was candy. Valium
right?
and martinis. Yep.
Mother's little helper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What a drag it is getting old.
And he sees this prescription. He's just going off on a tangent on everything. And then the devil shows up and starts talking to him. And this guy doesn't even realize the devil's there. He's just, going along with it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, hello. What are you doing here?
Yeah, which is strange. That basically just tells you this episode is not to be taken entirely seriously. He doesn't even react to the existence of this guy, right? I mean,
yeah.
He's like, what do you want?
That old blood pressure machine.
Oh, I know. I've seen those.
Yeah.
He just appears in the corner, this guy.
Mm-hmm.
No pentagrams, no incantations. He's just
well,
no flashing light, no smell of sulfur.
If you look at him closely, he has a devils on his tie, little cavorting devils on his tie. He has
I
a devil
didn't notice
lapel.
that.
Yeah, he's a devil lapel. Looks like a head with horns on it.
Yeah,
maybe
that's what I get for watching it on a phone.
Yeah, I watched it on a TV screen, so it was a little bigger. Yeah, see, those are that pattern on his tie are little cavorting devils.
Oh yeah, nice.
I wouldn't be surprised if the pin was something like that too.
It is. It's a head with horns coming off the side, like flames coming out the top.
Subtle.
And look how this dude looks like Gorbachev.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Not to be offensive to some people, but his weight too.
Yeah.
He's
or not
greedy. He's greedy
not
for your soul.
But what was his name? The dude that pounded his shoe on the desk in the UN.
Yeah. That wouldn't Gorbachev. I can't remember.
Brezhnev?
Yeah, that's it.
Brezhnev.
Yeah, he kind of looks like that.
Yeah, he looks
eyebrows.
like Brezhnev. Yeah, he looks like Brezhnev. That's what I meant.
Yeah, but his weight too,
Yep. Yeah, gluttonous. Gluttony.
It's gluttonous. Yeah. He's hungry for your soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a little sweaty.
Yeah.
But he's a very smooth talker.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's laying it down like, I could give you this great big thing, and all I want is this tiny little crumb of a morsel of...
Right. He uses words like that. Minuscule, infinitesimal.
Yeah, insignificance. You'll never miss it.
Exactly. And this guy's like, huh. And so he gives him this spiel, but he does figure out, he's like, wait a second, you're the devil and you want my soul. And he's like, precisely. Yeah.
I have many names.
Yep. But he says, what's because he asks him what he wants, and he wants, I want to live. He thinks he's going to die because he's sick all the time. So he wants to live, and he wants more than just to live. He wants to be, he doesn't want to worry about being sick or hurt or damaged.
Yeah,
That's
indestructible.
he wants to be indestructible. That's his his pathology, So he says that, well, I have this contract, and it even has this clause in it that I'm looking out for you, which will mean that you can live for thousands of years and nothing will ever happen to you. But I'm adding this clause in it. Any time you can come back to me and say, I don't want to live anymore, and then I'll kill you. But I get your soul. And he's like,
Right.
oh, yeah. He doesn't read the fine print. And there's so many ways that the devil can screw you over out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I love how he asks for a pin, and the way they do that with the pin just pops right out.
Yeah, they do a little camera stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
But if anybody's ever played D&D and tried to make a deal with an Afridi or something like that, like a djinn or whatever, they will grant you your wish, but they'll go out of their way to screw you. So you have to come up with these elaborate rules, like, okay, I want this, but you're not going to squish me. I want a bunch of money, but you're not going to dump it on my head. And you just go on and on and on and on. And if you have a good game master, it can last like hours writing these like legal scripts and stuff.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't read it. He's like, whatever, and signs it.
There's a lot of that in Arabian Nights, where you're talking to a jinn, and you better be clear with your words, because you could wind up with no limbs anymore. Hey, you're living forever. Too bad about your limbs, though.
Right. Yeah. And so you have to really be specific. Now, he does ask him a couple of questions in here about that.
No catch, no hang up, no loopholes.
But
Like the devil finds it, he pulls out like a branding iron thing and like,
and it kind of stuck to the page a little bit, but they rolled with it. But it left a pitchfork mark on there, so it's like an actual contract. It's like a legal thing. It's got duplicate page, carbon paper, and all that on there. But the fact that he just doesn't even read it and signs it just starts to show you how dumb he is.
Yeah, arrogant.
He's arrogant, greedy. Now, the thing about this shot, so it cuts literally from that. He throws all the medicine out the window, like he doesn't need his wife. Like, what are you doing? And then it just kind of cuts to this. And
he's like nosedives right into the rails of a subway car.
But the thing
diving.
The thing about it is it doesn't tell you how much time has passed.
Right.
So I would understand these scenes more if like 50 years had gone by, 10 years had gone by, and he's starting to realize that being indestructible is kind of boring.
Yeah.
But what he's doing here is he's doing insurance scams to make money. So he throws himself in front of the train, and it's a good scene because he just wanders in, and it's like people sitting around, a woman with her baby, and everyone's nicely dressed, and it looks normal. And the train comes by. It doesn't have any damn graffiti all over it. It's clean, There isn't a bunch of thugs with sharpened screwdrivers in it or anything. But he throws himself in front of it, and it runs him over, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's dead!" And he just gets up, and he's like, "Okay."
Yeah. Interesting note that on the platform, only one woman faints. The rest of the women just turn their backs or cover their eyes or something like that. And the men do too, right? But none of them faint. So this whole notion that all women were portrayed as fainting all the time is just nonsense, okay? Nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, but no one would want to watch somebody, no normal person would want to watch somebody get run over.
Everybody would look away. I mean,
Yeah.
So this guy,
So then he's in here. And here's the insurance guy, and he's like, only $1,500 or $1,200, and he's like, all right, I'll take it. And that was a lot of money back then. You could buy, I think, like in 1959, you could buy a house for like $12,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
In California.
And it's funny because as this guy's doing this, he shoos him away, and another one's coming in from a bus company.
Yeah, from the bus company. Yeah. So what he's doing, he's running scams where he's getting hit by stuff and having and she's like, "You've had 14 accidents."
Yeah.
His wife. Now, does she look a little older to you than she did in the other scenes? That's how.
Maybe.
I mean, she looks like she's wearing almost the same exact clothes, but
mind you, too, as a little bit of a cinema buff, it wasn't something that was being done until like the mid 60s, really, of time jumps, jump cuts to future times. That really wasn't being done a lot.
right. I just think that this episode would have served the episode much better if there had been some kind of significant time jump.
Yeah, I mean,
he's
just
bored, and now he's just doing whatever.
Yeah, pan over to a calendar and have it go from 59 to 63. Just give us a sense of some sort of gap in time at least.
Or they could have set this in like 1950 and then made it 1959. Because
correct.
Honestly, between 50 and 59, nothing in this apartment changed that would have be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So,
and the only thing that would have changed was the way they rule at the end of the episode. Not to spoil it, right? It's like in 1950, if we had started the show and started this episode in 1950, death penalty would have been automatic, not even something to even be discussed.
Well, what I mean is
right?
he signs the deal with the devil in 50, and he does all this stuff in 59, and that gives him enough,
59.
Right, and that gives him enough time to be bored with stuff. Because what he's doing here is he's telling her in that scene where he's collecting all this check money, and she's like, "Well, just enjoy the money and everything." And he's like, "It's boring. Everything's so boring, and there's no danger, so that everything's boring." So he goes in here and he mixes up a cocktail of like iodine, ammonia, and something else. Rubbing alcohol, yeah. And he drinks it, and he's like, "Well, this was enough to kill 12 men, but it just tastes like weak lemonade to me."
Yeah.
And she look at her. She's like,
"Oh my god!"
Doing? Yeah. Also, her dress has a bunch of buttons on the back, so I don't understand how she gets into the thing. But something that I noticed. It was just something I noticed.
He decides he wants to jump off the roof. He wants
I'm going to jump in like the, what does he call it? The light well of the building. So like in the interior.
14 stories up or something.
Yeah.
And she's trying to talk him out of it.
She's got all those buttons on the back. Like, what is that?
That's hysterical.
They dress themselves backwards and like spin the shirt around, and
yeah, probably.
She's trying to talk him out of it because she doesn't really quite understand what's going on.
I've got this theory that this guy never had a soul, or what we're looking at is the byproduct of this alleged teensy weensy little thing that the devil contracted him for, which is his soul.
Right.
And the reason why he doesn't even flinch when she falls off the side of a building is because he has no compassion. He doesn't even see it as an emotional event. He sees it as a malicious opportunity. Right.
So what happened here was she was like, "Please don't throw yourself off. We can go do something else." And she backs up trying to stop him, and basically he doesn't push her. It didn't seem like, but she just
she fell.
She falls
over the
and
edge.
It doesn't show it here in the slides, I don't believe, but there's a part where you don't actually see her fall. All you hear is like a thud, and he looks down, and it's a dark, like, well, and then lights start coming on, and but I don't know how they did it, like animated wise or something, or however they did the shot. It was just black and white, dark, but with the lights coming on, illuminating as it goes down. I don't know. I thought it was a really cool shot.
Yeah, they filmed it like they showed the edge of the building and her backing up to it, and then it goes to another shot like this, and she just falls backward out of the camera.
Yeah, out of frames, probably onto like a mattress or something.
Yeah.
Well, it was probably a forced perspective shot, right? You see the buildings in the background are basically just panels, right? They're very flat looking.
Yeah, they're wood panels with like lights on them.
So the shot was probably a dark set with a forced perspective of a building, and the lights coming on were actually small windows getting larger and larger as it forced the perspective up towards the camera, right? It was probably a really simple thing.
I thought the shot was, and it sucks that we can't see it here, but it was great. And the other thing is being in black and white. I think you can get away with a lot more things
Mhm.
in black and white. Like simplify colors and textures and whatever to get away with that. Because if this was all in color, you could probably tell those were fake buildings.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
most
yeah,
you can
yeah.
tell they're fake now, but I mean, at least it's somewhat believable.
Yeah, mind you, we're watching this at its best resolution, probably
Right.
remastered from the original negatives. And when
Yeah.
you watched it back then, you were basically watching it from the butt end of a beaker. You know, I mean,
Yeah, we probably had like snow
1959.
all and
Oh
lines
yeah,
and
the
stuff.
reception was not good.
Yeah, had
you
like
know,
the
with
Charlie
your
Brown.
cousin holding onto the aerials on the roof while your brother did it on the TV set. You know, it's like, it's
And then he
not
gets the
4K,
bright idea
kids.
of that he like, hey, you know what? Let's try the electric chair. That might be something, you know.
Hello, Miss Martin
Hey, Martin.
Muses.
Hey, Miss Martin.
So he gets on the phone and he admits to murdering his wife, even though he didn't. He's gonna.
Why
take it.
would he do this? It's like so bizarre that he would choose to do this. You know, why not just continue your insurance scams? I mean, what do you? Where
Well-
is your brain, dude?
He's totally misusing his immortality.
Yeah, or influenced by the lack of a soul due to the contract in the first place. It's not really made clear at all, except that the devil is grinning through the whole thing the whole time.
Well, I don't think the devil happened upon this dude on accident.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
he's like, ooh, he is an
specifically-
easy soul.
Yeah, this is this is a sucker
Yep.
right here.
Interestingly enough, I think this. Has anybody ever heard of the a book called the Screw Tape Letters? A series of letters,
Yeah,
basically
uh-huh.
written, right?
C.S. Lewis.
Was that
I think.
from this same time period? Because this guy would be a perfect minion in that story. I mean, it's almost like
C.S.
right out of
Lewis,
it.
Wasn't he?
Yeah,
dead by
C.S.
this
Lewis.
point?
Yeah.
He was
Yep.
dead by then, right? By now.
No, that was 61, I think, was
Really?
when those were published. So it was either right after that or during this that he was publishing those letters.
Because I
So-
thought he was like a prolific writer in the early 1900s.
He
no,
was
no.
as much as
Around
J.R.
the same
Tolkien.
time as Tolkien, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
yeah,
contemporaries.
basically the same
Yeah.
age.
All right. Oh, okay. But I thought the one
So-
was he the one that was like kind of loosey goosey with his relationships.
Yeah, who knows? They've dug up so much crap on everybody. It's like I don't even know.
Like
you know,
yeah,
it's like,
okay.
Who knows?
Like he had like 4 mistresses and 2 wives or something.
Yeah, and I'm sure Carnegie did too, and Hess and
Yeah.
everybody. I mean, like these were idiot guys back in the day, and yeah, they had a bunch of mistresses on the side. It's like okay, yeah, and they drank as well. Oh my God, you know, it's no, I don't know, whatever. Sherlock Holmes did morphine, and nobody talks about that.
Oh yeah, or cocaine.
It's
Well,
to help him
at
think.
this point, dead people, they can say anything they want about dead people, and it,
Thank you.
Yeah.
they're not there to defend themselves.
Yep.
So this is this guy's lawyer, and it's the last day of the trial, and the lawyer's like, dude, I've never seen anybody want to die so much, here's what we're going to do today to keep you from getting killed. And the guy's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go to the judge, and
Yeah.
we're just
He even
gonna
makes he makes a comment about if they put him in an electric chair, it's just going to drive up the electric bill.
Mhm. Yeah, he's looking forward to it,
yeah.
which is crazy.
The
the
screw
screenplay
tape
has
letters. It says that they were published serially in 1941 in the Guardian, a weekly religious newspaper.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the collection wasn't put together until he was almost, too old to write anymore. And I remember
Right.
that the publication that I picked up was like a collection that was made in like 1960 or 61. But yeah, this has got screw tape letters written all over it. These kinds of scenarios where, the devil was dressed in a nice suit and maybe drove a Jaguar, But yeah, anybody who watches Law and Order would just be like, why didn't this lawyer just do what the guy asked him to do? Why would he change the whole game plan and get this guy not to be electrocuted? Like, wouldn't he have disclosed to his own lawyer, like, look, I'm immortal. I can't be hurt. Okay, here, let me show you.
Right.
Then he
And
was
of
like,
course,
"You
for
need a psych
story
exam."
reasons, they have to go this way. But also keep in mind, it's 1959. People actually like tried to do their job back then.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, he could lose his registration to the bar. So
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
that's right. That was still decades away. Those lawyers that we all hate now.
well, you got to remember they didn't even have Miranda rights by this point either.
Right.
Oh,
So-
yeah. That's before all
man.
that. This is the Perry Mason days.
Yeah, this is when they
Yeah.
could smack you around and get a confession and it would stick.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Here's the sentencing.
It's got that classic picture of Washington in the
George.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I love this. He's like, "Oh, I'm getting the death chair for sure." And I'm like,
Oh, this is also the same year that Hawaii became a state.
"Oh,
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
1959.
That's friggin' crazy.
So that flag might not be accurate.
probably not."
True. It's true.
Yeah, and I don't think the appeals process for death penalties either, for life terms, I don't think the appeals process was really on par even with 1969.
I'd
this
have to
point.
look, but I doubt that you sat in jail for 20 years waiting to die like you do now.
Oh no, yeah.
No,
I
no,
mean, there were cases of it that right after they left the courtroom, you're on your way.
Yeah. So in this scene, he's like, "Hey, you're guilty and all this." I figured once he pled, then guilty, then that would have been it. But anyway, so they go through this whole thing, and his lawyer's all happy because he's like, life sentence. He's like, "Wow, I managed to pull you out of that death sentence," and he's
Right.
like, "What the hell?"
yeah.
Yeah. So
I
kinda-
think the next slide is shows his face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
What?
Life.
I don't think people understand what life means for me.
Yeah.
And, right.
Yeah, well, to drive that home, there's literally a discussion between him and the guard. What's life? 40 years, 30, 50 years? And he's like,
Yeah.
not even close, dude. Hold my beer.
I'll be
Yeah.
here after the city crumbles.
Although realistically, once he went past a certain thing, they'd have been like, "Well, what are we going to do with this guy?" And all he had to do was live long enough to hit 2023, and they definitely let him out.
Oh my God. How about survive one riot in
Yeah.
in the jailhouse? And then all of a sudden the federal government's like, we need you as a super agent, you dumbass.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I was going to comment on that whole thing at the end, but anyway, so yeah, he gets sentenced. So he goes, and then they're like, "Well, this is your last meal." And I thought, oh, they are going to try to execute him, but it's
I
like,
thought
no,
that too.
it's your last meal here at the jail before we
Mhm.
send you to the penitentiary.
Yeah.
And the guard is congenial. He kind of like likes him and stuff, and talking to him and whatever.
Yep.
And this guy's thinking, "Man, I'm screwed now."
I mean, there's no thought of, why don't I try and escape first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's very
What's
stupid
going to happen?
person.
Are they going to shoot him? They can't. So
Yeah, he could have gotten out of there easy, but no, he's dumb. He just thinks he's
Yeah.
going to be locked in a cage for decades and go crazy. So-
in a remake of this episode, I would have made the guard look a little bit more like the devil to kind of drive it home, and that all of a sudden he turns and then he looks back and it's no longer a guard, it's actually the devil. And you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like this
Yeah.
whole thing was a malicious trick to get him to this position.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Well, and the thing is, the devil made the deal with him because he knew he was going to screw himself
Right. I mean,
sooner than
Yeah.
later.
he can see all time, right? I mean, the devil has that kind of power to see forward in time or something like that. I mean,
Well, doesn't even
aren't
do
those
that.
some
He
of
says
the-
this guy's a screw up, and that it's gonna.
Right. It's inevitable for him to wind up with that way. It's hysterical.
So this is where he asks the devil to enact the escape clause, because, yeah,
Yeah, and
Ridiculous.
he's cackling with laughter too. He's like,
Devil's
"I
like, "Oh,
didn't
that
have
didn't
to
take
do
long."
any. All I had to do was convince you to sell your soul, and I didn't have to do anything else."
then boom, he's dead.
He didn't have to work very hard for
And
it.
he says
No, he
like,
didn't.
"You look like a man who's about to have a heart attack."
and that's
Oh,
it.
man, spoken like a mobster. You don't look very good. Maybe you should sit down. You know, you don't look too healthy.
Yeah. Well, at least this guard was attentive and wasn't gone
Yeah.
for, and the cameras were shut off. And Blair knows where I'm going with this.
Yeah. This is a pre
Yeah,
scene
yeah,
days.
free.
Yeah,
Let's just leave it there. Just leave
Yeah.
it right there.
Hey, maybe this is what happened.
Surling.
Yeah, I love these. I love these parts at the end where he kind of tells the story of the next. Tells
The episode I watched,
the next
it just
episode.
rolled the credits. It didn't have this.
Really?
Yeah, it didn't have this in there.
Oh, I love the modern
Unless
world.
this
I
came
really
on right
do.
after the credits. Well,
Yeah, I think if you get the DVD set and stuff, it has
Okay.
all the
right.
commercials.
Mine just has
and
all that
stuff in there.
nonsense with the
The
where it comes
bumper.
up with the next episode, and you got to click that off to see the credits and whatever. Oh, you're saying that DVD set had the original commercials?
Right. And
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
think not during it, but at the end, it shows
Right.
a commercial.
Like, yeah, commercials for cigarettes and booze and
Yeah.
Well, they call it like a bumper. It's like, and next week next
Oh, yeah.
episode.
Funny
it's-
thing, the wife in this
Mhm.
started out doing commercials for coffee.
Yeah.
Bob never has a second cup at home.
You know, I would bet that if you could find one of those commercials, that's one of the spoofs they're making in Airplane. That is a spoof. That
Oh yeah,
everybody
that's
knew
totally
that joke.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. I got the joke even as a kid.
Yeah. That movie, the movie Airplane. You had to have watched shows like this to get some of it.
Right. Yeah, it was meta on meta on meta on
Right.
meta on meta. It was just hysterical. But
Yeah.
Well, even the airport scene where the guys walk the airport and all the religious people are coming up to him.
Right.
Once upon a time, any airport you went to, it was just chock full of religious nuts.
Yeah,
I remember
think,
they finally had a law that kicked them all out because it was.
Well, I think it was post 9/11 they got rid of it.
Oh no, even before that, even when I was a kid,
Oh really?
not too long after Airplane in the '80s, it just got so crazy with all the Moonies and all that they're like, okay, everybody out.
Yeah.
Can't be in the
Yeah,
airport.
well, there was some nefarious nonsense going on with the whole Mooney thing.
Yeah,
So they were just
yeah.
like, that's it. You guys are done.
Well,
Forget it.
it
Get
was-
out of here.
It was because I think I bought a book off of one of those. It was a good book. But I mean, it was about religion and stuff, but it was kind of interesting. But the guy that sold it to me, he wasn't like all weird looking. So,
Right.
Um,
But they were there. I remember my
Yeah.
father would continuously grumble about that stuff all
well,
the time.
nobody wants to be hassled by people.
Mm-hmm.
About
Especially in an
stuff.
airport.
Yeah,
It's
you got
stressful enough.
Now they'd get
Yeah.
the Waffle House treatment.
The Waffle House treatment. Like, you're going to isolate it like that? God, I think on Twitter, at least, there's like 5 different restaurant fights every day, and they're
Yeah.
with employees. I mean, like,
Yeah.
wow, what is
That's
going
just
on
the
in
one
this
that came
world?
to mind. That's
I
just,
subscribed to like 5 or 6 of those channels, and I was watching every day all these fights break out in Walmart and.
I can't do it. I can't watch the crumbling of our society.
No, I continuously,
time.
I come across them by accident, but to seek them out as a part of your entertainment cycle is just like, really? Seriously, man?
So this episode,
Go ahead.
I was going to say that to kind of wrap this episode up, because this is, I mean, like kind of a lot of philosophical stuff happened in the first episode, but this one was pretty cut and dry. This guy's basically a piece of junk, and he went and messed around and did the most dumb stuff. When what he could have done with his immortality and his invulnerability is he could have been a literal superhero.
Mhm.
Right.
He could have walked into buildings and saved babies. He could have been a super soldier. He could have done all kinds of stuff like climb Mount Everest and done all these dangerous scientific experiments that nobody else could do. He should be immune to radiation, right? So he should be able to go in the core of a reactor and reset the rods. And
Mhm.
he could have literally been Superman without the ability to fly or anything. Instead, he did all this. Or if you wanted to go the other route, I mean, he could have like, he's
Yeah,
going
he
to
could
live
have
so
been
long. He could have been
a writer or something.
right. He could have been a trillionaire and had like harems of women and
Mm-hmm.
just think of all the hedonistic crap he could have done. But instead, he's like, I'm just going to go to jail.
Insurance.
And eventually, after thousands of years, you might get bored enough to where I'll do a stretch, I'll do a nickel, and see how it is, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
but he didn't do any of that. He was
Yeah.
he was a clown from start to finish.
Exactly.
And
Well, and two, the devil doing this, he's not going to look for somebody that's going to
Right,
do
they would
that.
even-
That's going to stay
right,
around
right.
for a long time.
because if he wanted real excitement, what he could have done was try to figure out how to get out of the contract.
Yes, that would have been the ultimate.
Right.
How to screw the devil.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jake, any trivia for this?
There's not a whole lot. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. At the time this series first aired, it was commonly believed that frequent cause of hypochondria was a desperate need to find something to occupy one's mind.
Oh yeah, boredom.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
so this guy would have been an avid TikTok user then.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, right? Good heavens.
Oh yeah, you
Complaining
know it.
about first world problems all day and night. I'm so bored. I need to tear down the universe, right?
Yeah. The wife, she did Folgers coffee commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I think this was the lawyer. He did Charmin bathroom tissue.
Oh, he was the Charmin guy.
Mr.
Don't
Whipple.
squeeze the Charmin.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mr.
Wow.
Whipple.
Whipples, yeah.
Don't squeeze the Charmin. But he must have did that much later because I remember
Yeah.
seeing him in the 70s. He was older then.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Won't squeeze the Charmin. Yeah. Now he'd be like, don't steal the Charmin. Just don't
Yeah,
walk out
right.
of it. Yeah, just don't. Yeah. Well, go ahead. It's less than $900. So.
Yeah, that's pretty much it on the trivia. For it.
Well, I want to tell you guys, I there was a few reviews that I watched that kept on bringing up how many times his full name is mentioned in the show, right? They call him by his entire name, Walter Bedecker, right? They don't just say Walter, they don't say Mr. Bedecker. It's Walter Bedecker every single time. So I don't know why, but a bell rang in my head and I was like, I want to look into this. So I looked it up and it turns out that the word Bedecker, written A-E, B-A-E-D-E-K-E-R, his is without the A at the beginning. So it's a B-E, right? But there was a term where it was called, it had to do with a travel guide. There was a generic corporate name around the turn of the last century that if you wanted to get a travel guide, it was called a Bedecker. So Walter's last name is a kind of pamphlet about traveling the world, about traveling on a journey, right? And this is the Walter Bedecker, this example of humanity dying of a heart attack on the floor, right? And it was called that because of the name of the founder of this guide company was Carl Bedecker, right? Also, just as a note that the name Bedecker, A-E, is the same as Daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N, as opposed to the actual devil, which is a demon, D-E-M-O-N. I just thought that these are just curious points. But I really hit the jackpot. I explored what the devil was calling himself at the time, called Walder, right?
Uh-huh.
In modern times, in our day and age, that is the name of a Hufflepuff chaser, right?
What?
From the Harry Potter universe, there is a kid in the Hufflepuff in the Harry Potter timeline that was a chaser for the Hufflepuffs.
Oh,
And I was
okay.
like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, I need to go a little deeper. Let's see what else we got here. So it turns out that one of the last Welsh people to hold the crown of England with authority, his last name was Caldwalder as well. And that's where the name gains its footing for the rest of these other things. The other noted one was a gentleman named John Lambert Caldwalder, and he was a assistant U.S. statesman in the United States government during the turn of the last century. Born in 1836 and died in 1914, he was part of one of the oldest standing, continuously operating legal firms in the United States, called Walder, Wickersham, and Taft, has been operating since the turn of the last century. And one of the things that he did was he was Secretary of State under Grant, assistant to Secretary of State under Grant. He was part of the American Academy in Rome. He was president of the New York City Bar Association and was well noted by the public during his lifetime for consolidating the New York public library system from multiple privately owned libraries into a consolidated state-run library system. I bring this up because Serling knew all of this when he named the character. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And it may have been a commentary about contracts and politicians and lawyers because.
Wow.
So like I said, when I started going down this rabbit hole, I was like, "Ooh, there's some juice on this bone." I can tell.
I mean, these shows are well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And the final one is that there's an ice cream parlor company that's still in operation to this day that was started in 1927 in Wales called Caldwalder's Creamery or Ice Cream Parlor. And the last family member died in 1983, and it is still an operating business under that name in Wales. So take it for what you will. Those are the attachments to actual history and why these characters might have been named what they were named. I found the whole thing really fascinating, considering how whimsically spiritual this whole thing is. So in a teleplay or a movie, it is legally very, very difficult, and this has been going on forever. You cannot mention a specific person by name. And that might be the reason why they continuously said Walter Beckerman, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to get in trouble. If they didn't nail that name every single time, somebody might have gotten the sense that they were insulting this former state Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Right? Or the legal firm that he represented as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's interesting. It was definitely something that I wanted to note because you're talking about the devil in 1959.
Yeah.
You know, when people were still going to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it had much more impact on that aspect of it than for people today. They're just like, oh, this guy's a dummy for not reading the contract. That's our takeaway. The other people's takeaway is, he sold his soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the more horrifying aspect of it. Ours is, oh man, he got screwed on the legal stuff. you know?
Well, one of my notes too was that this guy has no imagination, no compassion, no courage, and no staying power.
Yeah.
Okay? It's like, what the heck are you doing with immortality? Earning a paycheck? What are you, retarded? I mean,
yeah, he squandered it, and I think that's
if you think about it, he squandered everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his marriage.
For this, he squandered his marriage by, pretending he's sick all the time. He squandered his soul, and then with immortality, he squandered that too.
Right. Yeah. At least if you were going to make that trade, get something good out of it.
It's kind of like that thing with Captain America, the serum they gave him, if you pick a bad person, it's just going to amplify their bad qualities.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty much what happened here. It amplified his bad qualities.
Yeah. There's also a bit of immortal soul and reincarnation talk going on here as well. This idea that every time he killed himself, he got a lawyer to write him to help him get a check from the insurance company or something. What if that was him being reincarnated? Like, that's the metaphor they're playing with here. Every time this guy had the opportunity, like his wife actually did kill him, right? He did die underneath that train, right? Or he did die in front of that bus and got reincarnated in another life and still squandered it. That he's had multiple life cycles of reincarnation with his immortal soul, and he still squandered it.
Multiple chances, and
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, this guy was a zero.
That was the case.
I'm just trying to.
He could have been in that episode of She-Hulk. That one guy that would always fake his cousin. A terrible. Oh man.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I didn't enjoy this episode as much because it was very straightforward and the guy was just a moron. There's so many places that they could have went with it that I don't know, maybe the sensibilities of a 1959 audience wouldn't have let him do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this might have already been pushing the envelope, or it was just one that they wanted to kind of cram in there to eat up an episode. And it's not a terrible episode. It's better than like Peter Pan and Wendy. But
they would do that, like you said, they would do like a very serious one, but then they do kind of a funny, whimsical one to kind of lighten it up a little bit,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, plus also remember, this is not supposed to be a science fiction anthology. It's supposed to be a science fiction and fantasy anthology. They're dealing with spiritual matters as well as hyper science fiction matters, as well as psychological things as well. There's whole episodes that are just in somebody's psyche. There's another one where the sun is approaching, but it turns out to all be nonsense because the world is actually freezing. I mean, this show went all over the place with these concepts. So to have one that's about time travel and internal midlife crisis psychology right next to an episode of somebody squandering immortality, it's perfect. This is the 6th episode in a show that was trying to get up on its own feet. You've got to introduce these bizarre concepts juxtaposed against other ones that are bizarre as well.
Well,
so
and I think that's
a good start.
The draw to the show is also you never know what you're going to get. So, it's like a box of chocolates, but it's but you know what I mean. It's not going to be like a serialized story, or it's not like a crime drama where it's always going to be grounded with like bad guys and stuff. It could be you're on the moon or Mars. Isn't there an episode where a guy he's been marooned on a planet like purposely for a crime, and they give him a female robot as a companion, but you don't know it's a robot.
That's next month.
Oh, is it? Okay, I don't want to ruin that then. But I wasn't sure if that's Twilight Zone or something else. But
it's an asteroid.
Right. You go from that to like down to earth ones that are happening in present day at the time with real life problems and things like that.
I know. One of the other episodes, so like I was mentioning earlier, this show had no problem having the devil be around. And there's a really good episode later where this guy goes to a convent. It's a really bad storm. He's had a car wreck. And you hear this weird howling noise. And the brother's like, don't go over there. Don't go to that door. The guy goes for the door, and there's a man in there. He's like, begging him to let him out. Said these people are crazy. They've kidnapped me. I'm being held against my will. And, he eventually gets, the guy lets him out. And as soon as he does, the guy touches him. He drops to the floor, and all of a sudden this guy morphs into like Mephistopheles. Turns out he's been the devil the entire time. They caught the devil, and then this guy let him go, and then now he's on a search for the devil again. And then that one, that's like a really serious one. But then you have to have like whimsy ones where it's like the devil's more of a prankster, but really
I think we did one of that episode, and didn't you do a Twilight Zone best of, Jacob? I think I was a part of that.
Yeah,
And that was one of the episodes you
that was
covered.
one of
Was
the
that one?
episodes. Yeah,
That
like
that transformation sequence is on par with some of the best transformations of Hollywood.
Yeah. That was a really good one. Like I said, they handle that material that way, but then on this one they handle it's more of a comedy aspect of it. Whereas others is like there's like a sci-fi element, but then there's also kind of maybe a supernatural, because are they like the one they crashed and they're ghosts, but are they really ghosts, or is this an alien influence trying to make them think they're dead? It's got Jack Klugman in it. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like these spacemen are like the 23rd century version of the Flying Dutchman, flying around trying to prove they're not dead or something.
Right. And then you get the what people's ideas of what a spaceship would look like at that time, or I guess what their budget would would hold up to. But and if you think about it, at that time, the whole concept of the rocket lifting off and then landing on its struts was like a thing, and then it went away because people were like, "That's nonsense." But now we got Elon Musk doing it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
it's like
if he painted his rockets like bright red or silver or chrome,
didn't he say that he wanted to do like a 30s Flash Gordon motif on him?
Yeah, that's what I thought he did.
Thing? Yeah, it's like an Art Deco kind of thing.
Well, it's funny. I was just having this conversation on another panel the other day. He went out of his way to evoke that imagery. I mean, I'm totally convinced that it's not a coincidence, right? He wanted to invoke that steeple of a rocket ship, all stainless steel with the rivets showing and that big nose cone with the flaps coming off the side. He's evoking it. I mean, it's obvious. He wants those science fiction stories to be proven true by his own actions.
He also said that he wanted to make the nose cone pointy, like from the Dictator movie. I want the nose cone pointy. So not round. It's not. It doesn't change the aerodynamics. He's like, yeah, but it's more scary. Yeah, that movie's kind of funny.
It's great. We really do live in an age that is so wondrous and frightening at the same time that it's hard to really know how to feel about it.
Yeah. Pulling up some pictures here of SpaceX rocket and Flash Gordon's rocket.
Well, I do know that they need to work on their takeoff platform, because they jacked that thing up. When it took off, it burned a hole in it.
I'm pretty convinced that they knew that was going to happen, because I've been watching these shows on Sea Life. It's this girl who calls herself Octopus Girl. She does these reviews on the various sea animals, and she did this episode on this shrimp that can use cavitation as a weapon, and I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
That this technique of using cavitation as a weapon was so potent, and the amount of forces being used by the arm is nothing compared to the forces it accidentally generates in the water.
You're talking about it has like a little boxing hand, like the little toy.
That's one crustacean. There's another one that snaps its claws and produces a jet that can actually break glass. So
I saw that.
There's some crazy. So this notion that Elon Musk and his gang would even understand what 34 Raptor engines would do once accumulated mass of the event happened, I think that they were just like, you know what? We need to build the stand and we need to fire these rockets all at once. Who cares if we lose the whole stand? It's cheaper to destroy this cheaper platform. Hey, it would be great if nothing happens. And all the engineering tells us that something may or may not happen. Let's just build it this way, and then we'll get a higher budget and build it better. Right?
What I understand is that it threw up so much debris, like large chunks of rock were smashing cars and going through. They had a tank farm there for the liquid oxygen fuel, and it was like pounding the tanks and denting them and stuff. So I mean, they might have thought something like, I don't think they thought it was going to be as big a deal as it was, because they got to do something, because that's not acceptable. It's not safe.
Well, of course, and understand that they may have had EPA regulations telling them that they couldn't run water through that launch pad because it's too close to the Gulf of Mexico, and there's higher restrictions in the Gulf of Mexico than anywhere else. So, God only knows, he may have been like, you know what, then we won't use water, and I will sue your ass for not allowing me to use water after my platform gets destroyed.
Right.
I could see Elon doing something
blew up,
like that.
it made a massive debris field out there.
Oh, it could have blown up the whole friggin' station if one of those tanks went up.
This the most powerful rocket ever fired, too?
Ever.
Biggest one ever.
Right.
Way bigger than Saturn III.
Yeah.
I don't think
this is a
that can be
space shuttle
used to extrapolate how much force was actually being applied. I think that they guessed at the newtons they were dealing with, but what that would actually look like once it started contacting the ground and furnacing the concrete and throwing rebar into the air, that's it. All bets are off. Too many variables.
So this is the spaceship, just this front part, and it looks a lot like the Flash Gordon rocket.
Well, the thing is that
Jacob, look up the Art Nouveau, not the Art Nouveau, the German impressionists film of spaceflight, and that's even closer to that rocket. I mean, it's like uncanny how much it looks like it. The Flash Gordon thing is still a little bit Hollywood, a little more Hollywood, but
it's got like the hot rod jalopy exhaust.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
It's got the thing, pointed nose.
Yeah. The antenna. Yeah.
Yeah, the antenna weather vane thing. That back part of that, it's a 2-stage rocket. That white part, that's the cylindrical part in the back, that's supposed to detach, and then it's supposed to go back to the Earth and land.
Yep.
Right.
Be recoverable.
Just like their Falcon 9s.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, look at that one in the middle there with the fins. That is totally 1950s, like science fiction.
Yep.
Shaped like a bullet and chrome and everything.
The fins on it.
Yep. Fins. Yeah. Yep. That's like Tomorrowland kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, it's really exciting. The first time I saw one of these things lift off for like a low altitude belly flop, the first demonstration of the belly flop maneuver, I felt like I was 5 years old, man, with tears in my eyes. I was like, wow, this is so exciting. I don't even know what to do with myself.
Yeah, look at that thing.
I mean, look at that. This is the actual booster rocket, and there was what? Almost
under the
this thing?
It was 30. There was only, I think, about 7 or 8 of them underneath that, but under the actual lifter, there were 33 of those.
I know
engines.
The first stage part has 6 engines, and then the lifter stage had just a crap ton.
Yeah.
I think like 5 or 6 of them failed.
I think by the end of it, 5 or 6 of them had failed, and they knew it was going to happen too. They wanted to find out.
Yeah, you're going to have a percentage of fail rate, but I think I'm trying to think have they determined why that launch wasn't successful? Something happened.
I haven't heard what the analysis of if they even have one yet or not.
Well, I know that it did this flip, right? But it was supposed to do that for the separation maneuver. But then it kept going, and eventually they hit the abort command, which is basically some explosives on the side that's supposed to punch a hole in the fuel tank. And once the fuel tank bled out enough, it lost its structural integrity because it wasn't rigid anymore, and that's when it bent. And they've got video of it where it bent, and then it came apart. But the fact that it stayed together as long as it did is kind of like it. They from what I saw on YouTube, they detonated the abort stuff, and it took another like 40 seconds for it to break apart. So it wasn't instantaneous. But
they got a ton of hard data. I can guarantee that, man. Because
hopefully, well, they had a camera on the interior of the second stage where you can see like the engines and stuff. and it was just, I mean, it was like night vision or looking or whatever.
And those are the cameras that they showed us. I mean, you watch some of the old footage of just these test launches of the main Starship. They've got cameras on every single wing, on both ends, on the tips, looking at everything all at once. They've got so much real-time data. And I love how these news networks are just like, oh, it blew up a few minutes after it left the pad. Yeah, because they pushed a button and the button actually made it blow up. So they were in control the whole time, even if it failed. They were still in control.
Right, exactly. And if you look at that middle picture, that's the stand that it was on. So,
and even though it broke up, they're declaring it a successful.
Well, if you look at it, I don't understand how it didn't do anything but that. Normally what would happen on a launch like this is there would be a thing underneath it that went into some tunnels, and the blast would be directed out. And it would come out the sides. And this was just like, it's Texas and it's the desert. We're just gonna maybe we'll strike oil while we're here.
I've been watching a bunch of these independent coverage guys that are covering this. I think it's this guy Marcus and this other guy AWAI. It's called What About It? But these guys were talking about, like, wait a second, because I saw the entire framework of that test stand get built. In real time, like every week, they would have a little more progress. And everybody was saying, where are the flame diverters? This thing is never going to stay together. They were quite literally saying it like about everything. That this is not going to work. How are we going to make this work? We can't make this work. And lo and behold, it didn't work.
Well, I mean, the rocket got in the air.
Yes.
And the landing pad is a different spot altogether. It's like far away from here in case it comes back and falls or whatever. But I mean, so what does this have to do with Twilight Zone? Well, this is something that you might have saw in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Going to
Jake,
space,
I think Blair, you got to go soon. So I don't know if we want to.
I don't know how long we're going to go for, but I got to go here a little bit later.
Okay.
The reason why we bring this up is because things like this never would have happened without the speculative fiction that we grew up with. This is where this got us, and this is closer to that reality than the NASA program ever was. NASA program always felt limited and restricted compared to this wondrousness.
Do you remember the early '80s? They had the Chronicles of Mars miniseries.
Yeah, I didn't really. I watched it.
I liked it, but those spaceships are just like that. They're like rocket ships.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about the NASA projects was it had a sole focus of beating the Russians to whatever they were trying to do, go to space, go to the moon or whatever. Whereas this is more of a commercial kind of, what are the applications for it, that kind of thing, where
it's the Apple of space flight.
Right.
Yeah. This is to get us back to the moon, to get us to Mars.
And to get the kids excited too. Every time a kid looks at that spacecraft, they're just like, "Wow, this looks like it might really happen." I mean, this is what
nobody's
it looks like
anywhere near us anymore in the space arena. I mean, China can put a capsule in orbit and all that, but so what?
I'm just waiting for that spaceship to go up into space and the pylons come off from the side, and it's like a warp drive.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Yep. Well, a lot of those rockets look like that's what they got going on with them. So, but this has been
interestingly enough. Yeah,
this has been a good stream.
Yes, it was.
We talked about Twilight, and then we talked about space, and
and now Blair has to go back into his wormhole.
Funny enough, the next episode, the Lonely, is the one with the convict on the asteroid.
There you go.
And it shows a spaceship in it. So.
Yep.
So.
And let's never forget that the hull of the DeLorean used by Doc Brown specifically used it because of a stainless steel skin. Okay, and whether or not that's actually predicting anything, the notion that a kid who watched Back to the Future could hear Elon Musk say stainless steel skin and make a connection in their mind, that's enough as far as I'm concerned. That's provocative enough.
Funny thing, I heard that the first cars, the Model Ts and that they were wanting to use stainless steel for the bodies, but it was so hard on the stamps that stamped the material. It was not.
Oh yeah, it wasn't feasible. Yeah. Because that stuff was brand new. Galvanized steel by that point was.
Well, surgical steel was a brand new thing by the time World War I ended. They pretty much nailed down surgical steel. I mean, that was a really new idea to be able to get that kind of cleanliness and nobleness into steel because it rusted all the time. That's even now. You go back, you look at how clean that spacecraft looks, and the welding techniques were all developed in real time. The thing looked like a total piece of garbage the first time they welded all those plates together. So they've been perfecting how to even deal with this kind of stainless steel. You want to talk about the IPs they've got in their pocket, the international patents that they've got in their pocket now. It's insane. Welding stainless steel. Yeah, talk to Elon Musk. He's an expert.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, that was great. That was a great stream. Blair, do you have anything coming up?
No, not this week. Now that Roman is back, he's still doing some home repairs. He's going to be streaming this Thursday, not of any particular thing, but more of like a Vegas memory thing. And then, hey, Shiro. We'll see what happens next week, what his schedule is going to be. But thank you for having me on the stream. I really like talking about old Twilight episodes. They're cool.
Yeah, me too. Glad to have you on. Stephen.
I'm pretty much the same way. Roman between Vegas and Roman's patio. It's been odd. He's planning on doing a show Thursday 5 p.m., but who knows how that's going to actually pan out.
I hope
it's been a quiet couple of weeks.
I hope that ends quickly for him. I hope that everything gets settled with the car and that stuff.
What a mess.
Shieldwall.
Yeah. So if everything goes okay with the Roman's Thursday stream, I'll probably be on that. And then on Sunday with Comics and Cosmetics, I should be on that stream. And that's what I got going on. Hey, thanks for having me on, Jacob. I know we had some raccoon issues in the beginning, but
Speaking of raccoons.
That's him right after he pulled all the plugs out of the wall.
Right.
So why you couldn't start streaming early enough. It's been great. Thanks for having me on. And
next week for me is The Shadow, 1994.
Oh, Baldwin movie?
I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Back when Baldwin wasn't absolutely crazy. So.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Nathan from can't remember the name of his channel. Hang on a second.
Nathan?
Yeah. Sorry, I can't remember the name of his channel, but he'll be on. The information will be on tomorrow. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, still got to get some other people on there, but that'll be fun. Cool. And that's all I got. Thanks to the panel and everybody in the chat that came in and
thanks
hanged out with us.
It's always a good
and
time.
make it fun.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, y'all have a good week, and we'll see y'all next Tuesday.
Take
Have a
care,
better one.
everybody.
All right.